Hey, you guys, I know it's been a minute. I have been missing y'all. I've been super busy. I've got a lot of irons in the fire. I'm out here fighting the good fight. Just still trying to juggle a lot of things at once, trying to get my finances back up, recovering from, certain things that happened to me, just kind of going through it, y'all, taking care of my different social media projects and working and taking care of family. But I've got content for you guys. I haven't forgotten about everybody here on YouTube. And I just want to say I'm so thankful. I've been reading through a lot of y'all's comments. Thank you so much, like literally, for even taking the time to leave a thoughtful comment on the different videos that I do. I jump from a lot of different genres and topics. And, there's a little something for everybody. Basically, I do that because I'm one of those multi-dimensional people that I have a lot of interests, things that move my soul or whatever. For example, I may put out, a compilation of photos celebrating the life of someone that I find interesting or beautiful. For instance, the video I put out on Gia Karanji, just a compilation of her beautiful photos. I do intend to cover her life story and the trauma and the things that happened to her. I do intend to get that out, all the way over to, other things I put out about child abuse, surviving childhood trauma, addiction, my own. I haven't even gotten finished with my own story, surviving loving an addict or growing up in an addicted family. So I'm kind of all over the map here on my channel, okay? I've got a little something for everybody, and I'm just trying to keep getting better and better. I do have to take breaks from time to time, but I haven't forgotten you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. And in this video, let's get to it real quick. I wanted to go ahead and just get something up to let you guys know I haven't forgotten about you, okay? And I'm going to start getting back to the content that you all are used to, the topics that I had been posting about in the past. I'm going to be building onto those things, the things you guys are interested in. I've got more of that coming, okay? But today, I want to talk about, real quick, one of my favorite writers, okay? Some of you may be familiar with her. Her name is Joan Didion. And, it's hot in here, but if I turn this air on, it's going to overshadow my voice. Joan Didion, and unfortunately, I didn't really run across her work until just a few years back, but it came right on time for me. I believe that things come into our life when we not only need the information, but when we're ready to receive it. You know how you might go along for years and years and years and never really take interest in someone or something or their work or their writing or whatever. And then all of a sudden it crosses your path and you just become obsessed with their work. You just kind of go, wow, this makes sense to me now. I can't get enough of it. It's because I believe that, yes, things are meant to come to us at the time where we need it and at the time where we are ready to receive that teaching, where we are either on a mental and emotional or spiritual level to be able to appreciate that teaching and apply it to our life. Whereas maybe 10 years ago, we would have overlooked it. We didn't care. We wouldn't have applied it right. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I feel about it. The same thing happened to me with Maya Angelou. I'm a huge Maya Angelou fan, just love her work. And really, I only just got into appreciating her work more in the last 5 years. I'm thinking, where have I been all of my life? Thanks to Netflix, where they can actually put things in documentaries now and we can watch these things. It's great because people who otherwise maybe wouldn't have run across the work of these great people can catch on to it through stuff like that now. Social media, Netflix. You run across a documentary and go, oh, I had no idea. Their work just resonates with me so much. And then you can go and get the books and everything like that, right? Okay, so Joan Didion. There is a documentary about her on Netflix, which is where I ran across her about 4 or 5 years ago. And she wrote one of her very first and most famous pieces of writing it was first published in a 1961 edition of Vogue magazine. And at that time, it was called Self-Respect, Its Source, Its Power. That's what it was called when it was first published in Vogue. Then it was republished again called on self-respect. That was the title, again in her 1968 collection called Slouching Towards Bethlehem. And this piece of writing, it's an essay on self-respect. Her thoughts and observations and whatnot on self-respect. Love Joan Didion. Oh my God. And so just a little bit about her. She's a novelist and an essayist, known for her lucid prose style and incisive depictions of social unrest and psychological fragmentation. I love her work. Just really do. Can't get enough of it. And I don't know, I guess she had an okay childhood. She had a military father who was not the picture of stability. I don't know if she went through any real trauma or anything, but she did spend some time in her early years in the neuropsychiatric ward of a San Francisco hospital for depression. And they say someone who wrote a book about her life, it was someone named Tracy Daugherty, wrote a biography about Joan Didion called The Last Love Song. And he says of her that chronic melancholia and paranoia became her default setting, both on and off the page. So she kind of had this about her. Maybe that's why I'm so drawn to her work. But she lived 87 years, and she kept full command of her intellectual capacities, you know. She did lose her husband and daughter in 1 year, I believe. And she wrote a book about her grief called The Year of Magical Thinking. I have that book. I wanted it for so long, and I ended up treating myself and buying it last year. I have not gotten to read it yet. I'm waiting for the perfect time because I know it's probably going to help me a lot. I haven't started reading it yet, but I do own it. I wanted it. The Year of Magical Thinking. And this is where she lets out her grief over losing her husband, John Donne. They were both writers. And her daughter, which she adopted, a little baby girl. I think, no, she was an infant. I was going to say, I think she was 2. She adopted this little baby girl, and they named her Quintana Roo, R-O-O. I thought that was the most unique name I'd ever heard. But she did lose, and Quintana grew up and lived a pretty long life, but not long enough. She was in her 30s, I think, when she passed. So that was very tragic, and Joan had to live through that. And Joan lived years and years and years beyond losing her husband and daughter. But I really love her work. So, I don't want this to cut off on me. I'm going to get to reading you guys a couple of parts from that essay that I love so much. Let's see if there's anything else I want to tell you guys about her. Really quickly. Took a few notes here. But yeah, this has been considered her best essay. In this essay on self-respect, Joan explores qualities that contribute to, as well as inhibit, developing self-respect. Primarily, how it has everything to do with how we feel about ourselves, and nothing to do with how others see us, okay? She says that she writes as a way to discover the meaning behind what she is seeing. I love that. She writes as a way to discover the meaning behind what she's seeing. I resonate with that so much because it's the same for me. I have often turned to journaling, writing, expressing, just to really examine and understand what I'm even going through, what I'm even experiencing in life. And writing about it helps me to do it. Just talk, just write it out and over it, and it helps me to understand the meaning, and I learn a lot from that. They say Joan was an avid cultural observer whose writing blended aloof glamour and vulnerability. Yes, I just love her so much. If you look up pictures of her back in the 60s, she was this writer chick. She was very chic with her cigarette and her Corvette, and she hung out with people like Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin, and, I'm sure she talks about that a lot, being a writer and having great parties and having people over, and she was just gorgeous. Oh my God, if you look at her back in the day. And I want to say one more thing before I get into the reading. Self-respect / self-esteem. When you look up self-respect, they kind of make it synonymous with self-esteem. Okay? And it kind of is. It's how we feel about ourselves. Yes, that's very important, how we feel about ourselves. No matter what anyone else says about us or thinks about us, we have to have this in here, how we feel about us, okay? And according to the American Psychological Association, having high self-esteem is key to positive mental health and well-being. High self-esteem matters because it helps you develop coping skills, handle adversity, and put the negative into perspective. So we have to have self-respect / self-esteem. Now, I'm also going to say self-respect is different for everyone. Self-respect and self-esteem can differ as well. A lot of times self-respect is also, to me, personally, I think of it as what you're willing to do and still feel good about in your soul. To me, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. If it's something you're willing to do and your soul resonates with that, even if everybody else thinks it's ugly, nasty, dirty, stupid, doesn't matter. As long as you feel self-respected, as long as your self-esteem feels good about it, as long as it's not hurting anyone else, abusing anyone else, taking advantage of anyone else, to hell with that, right? That's the way I feel about it personally. Okay, let's move on into some quotes from the essay on self-respect by Joan Didion. To live without self-respect is to lie awake some night beyond the reach of warm milk, phenobarbital, and the sleeping hand on the coverlet, counting up the sins of commission and omission, the trusts betrayed, the promises subtly broken, the gifts irrevocably wasted through sloth or cowardice or carelessness. However long we postpone it, we will eventually lie down alone in that notoriously uncomfortable bed, the one we make ourselves. Whether or not we sleep in it depends, of course, on whether or not we respect ourselves. I don't know. So many parts of this essay. It's online. If you would like to read the entire essay, you can find it. But there's certain parts of it that just really resonate with me. Okay. Let's go ahead and start. I wrote out quite a bit, but this is really just 2 paragraphs. That was kind of the first part. I've got a little bit from the middle, and I've got the ending paragraphs that I like so much. In brief, people with self-respect exhibit a certain kind of toughness, a kind of moral nerve. They display what was once called character, a quality which, although approved in the abstract, sometimes loses ground to the other, more instantly negotiable virtues. Nonetheless, character, the willingness to accept responsibility for one's own life, is the source from which self-respect springs. I like that. To have that sense, this is kind of the later part of the essay, I'm skipping around. To have that sense of one's intrinsic worth, which for better or for worse constitutes self-respect, is potentially to have everything. The ability to discriminate, to love, and remain indifferent. To lack it is to be lost.